Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Wednesday, the 9th day of October, 2024, Wednesday of the 27th week of the year, the 27th week in Ordinary Time. And again, unlike what is happening in the Gulf of Mexico and in Tampa coming sooner and sooner, it is a beautiful blue, cool day here in Carolina. Again, keeping everyone on the coast, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, even in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, all those people again in prayer. As Hurricane Milton comes through, again in this next couple of hours and days. So hopefully everyone again continues to be safe and sound. Continuing also to pray for those who are affected by Helene in West North Carolina. Again, all of these things that need always our attention because again, our world, again, not imperfect, but on its way to perfection. And so it experiences on this way, unfortunately, the pains and the hurts and the burdens of being a world that is in progress, constantly in progress. How we respond, however, in these times, again, is our way to further God's reign, God's kingdom, coming to us and being revealed to us. And so on this Wednesday of the 27th week of the year, Galatians continues. Paul's letters to the Galatians, again, giving giving the great defense, the great evidence of the authority of Paul's mission to the church in Galatia, again, which is trying to be told to live by Jewish standards and by Judaic traditions, and not necessarily by the traditions that Christ and the Christian movement is opening up. And so Paul again begins to now give this great history of how he met Barnabas and what happened when they came together and where they went, and again how some people came trying to make the Christians more Jewish than Christian, and Barnabas even falling away within that. Again, how Paul basically preached this good news out in the open, or then privately to those who had notoriety in the community, so that they wouldn't be accused of anything else like that. So Paul is using any means whatsoever, both in private and in public, to spread this message of Christ to them. He then goes into the confrontation. So he goes to Jerusalem and has this confrontation with Peter about whether or not all Gentiles should be circumcised, whether they should take on Jewish practices. And as he says, I opposed him to his face and I was right. And so, because that's again how Paul thinks of himself always, that he's always right. And in some cases he is, in a lot of cases he's not. So this is where, again, Paul, though, makes the good point, again, that there is something new at foot. There is something new that Christ has done, and to hold to all of the old ways is not truthful and is not faithful to what it is that Christ said we need to be, again, as these renewed people in life with God and in God's life in our own. And so, again, impressing upon the Galatians that what his message is true and right. And any of these other people who are trying to turn into something else are not necessarily presenting the message, the gospel, as Christ desired it to be presented. In Luke's gospel, we have Luke's very short version of the Lord's Prayer. Again, being the apostles, as they do in Mark, as they do in Matthew, ask Jesus, teach us how to pray. And so Jesus basically gives them a pat statement, a kind of a pat collection of words, to basically say, which again was very different from everything else that Jewish people may have understood prayer to be. Just even beginning with the diminutive of calling God Father, of calling God Daddy, of the whole Abba, kind of understanding of one's relationship with God, not as Lord, not as King, not as Master, not as Creator of the universe, not any lofty titles, but calling God in an intimate way, as one would do to a loving father, a child to a loving father, of calling God this, of making sure again that we are conscious of three different things, three different things. That's what Luke's gospel kind of focuses on, that we are people who do God's will, that we are people who ask for God to feed us, and that we ask God to forgive us, but actually four things, and then ask us to forgive. The whole understanding, and not as we put to the test. So the four things that come in with this, there is no will. Sorry, I remembered this, but I just forgot now. It is that God's name is holy, to God to feed us, for us to forgive, and to us not to be put to the test. That's Luke's, whole focus in this. Again, we remember that God is holy, because if God isn't holy, then nothing can ever be accomplished. That's what holiness means, that God can do anything, including to us, that we need to be fed. And we need to be fed because we did not ask to come here. We need for God to give us what God needs to give us so that we can do the work that God has placed us on this earth to do. That is that whole thing. To forgive, because without forgiveness, there can be no love. There can be no love. And again, ask not to be tempted or put to the test. It's not necessary that God is trying to test us, but it's asking for us to have a clear vision of what it means to be tested, not to lose hope in sight because we are, not to lose hope in sight because we are tempted, but remember that in temptations, we better come to know ourselves so that we can do God's will, so that we can understand how we're being fed to be the people God needs us to be, and that we can forgive and that we can love as much as we can. An interesting part of this, today is always to remember, what is our posture for praying this? For so many years we've been taught, you can't even see it, we've been taught to put our hands together, hands together like this. I can't hold this thing and put our hands together. The reality of it is that our hands are supposed to be out like this. Hands are supposed to be out like this. And so many calls I get many times, Father, people are telling people to put their hands out like this, and that's only the position of the priest. Where are you reading that from? You're reading that from insecure priests, basically, who don't want anybody copying their things because they have to be whatever. That's not the truth. That's not the truth. We are all called to hold our hands, both hands open like this in that vulnerability so that God can act upon us, because that's what that prayer asks us to do. So let God act upon us. Let us pray with that freedom that is conscious of the fact that God can do anything with us when we ask God to fill us with what it is that we need to be God's people on this earth, to forgive and to learn from our mistakes. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.